Chapter 20. The Road to Ravenloft. Henry tended their wounds as best he could, healing burns and mending bruises. Navarra asked Muriel if she had more of that healing drink from the flask, feeling that Henry's hands were not enough to restore her fully. The were-raven said it was a health potion, and she had used it all. When they went back to the hut, Rowan found the gem beneath the floorboards, hidden among the roots that formed the foundation of the hag's house. After giving the shining green rock to Muriel, Rowan transformed into a bear and smashed the hut to bits. Navarra hated to think what might have happened if they had chosen to fight Lysaga inside the hideous hovel. A hag's house could be a dangerous thing if she was alive to use it. After Muriel bade them farewell and flew away to deliver the gem to the winery, Navarra asked Rowan how she was able to shift into a wolf the size of a horse.
"I think it's the magic of the fane," Rowan said. "After Henry consecrated it, I felt stronger. But as soon as I set foot outside the stone circle, that feeling was gone."
Navarra made a mental note to ask Gostamir about it when she saw him. Resting in the fane, they talked about Argynvostolt, wondering if the old castle might hold the last clue to lifting the curse. Navarra wanted to find the symbol of hope before going to Ravenloft, but she knew that if they went searching for it, they would be late to the dinner. It would have to wait. Henry had wanted to get on the road again to cut down on the miles they would need to travel the following day, but everyone was tired and still recovering from injuries. The women insisted they would be ready for a hard ride tomorrow. Henry was tired himself, so he didn't argue. They spent that night in the fane again, planning to leave for Vallaki before dawn. Though Gostamir held her in his arms again that night, Navarra still found it hard to sleep, knowing that she had killed his only daughter. Gostamir reassured her that she had done the right thing, but Navarra saw the tears that he tried to hide from her. When the four friends left the bog behind and were on the road again, Henry said, "I suppose it will be nice seeing Vallaki again." Irina gave him a look.
"It's Vallaki. You should know the name of your own town. You're the sheriff." "Sometimes he calls Vasili Vistani," Navarra said.
Rowan whinnied. Henry ignored them and rode ahead.
"So, Navarra,"
Irina whispered, riding on Rowan and walking abreast with Juniper.
"You like Gostamir?"
"Oh, yes," Navarra said, keeping her voice down so that Henry couldn't hear. By now the night was far enough ahead that he should be out of earshot.
"Gostamir is wonderful. I can't imagine life without him. I should have seen it long ago, but I do feel awful for Vasili. He's so sweet."
"What are you going to tell him?" Irina asked.
"Vasili, I mean." "I'm not going to say anything about Gostamir before the dinner. Vasili is already going to be worried about dining at Ravenloft and meeting the Count. I can't break up with him until afterward. I need Vasili to be focused. But what about you, Irina?"
"Me?" Navarra nodded to Henry. Irina blushed.
"Is he a good kisser?"
Navarra asked. Irina bit her lip and smiled.
"Definitely."
Navarra laughed.
"And for you?"
Irina asked.
"Who's the better kisser, Gostamir or Vasili?"
Navarra tapped her chin.
Well, to be honest, I think Vasili is, but I enjoy kissing Gostamir more."
Irina laughed this time, and Navarra joined in, and they went on giggling until Rowan gave a snort. Henry called back to them. "What's going on back there?" Irina and Navarra only laughed harder. Arriving in Vallaki by midday, they were greeted by familiar muddy streets and grey houses peering out from the fog, but the gloomy town seemed more active than usual. People's faces brightened when they saw their sheriff and his companions return. The four friends reached the old burgomaster's house and dismounted as Vasili came out to greet them.
"Friends!"
Vasily said.
"It's so good to see you again. Navarra!"
He ran to the elf, hugged her, and showered her with kisses.
"I have something for you. Wait here."
Navarra's heart sank when he returned with a bouquet of red roses.
"I wasn't sure when you'd be back, so I picked fresh flowers for you every day you were gone, just in case."
Navarra felt terrible, but she tried not to let it show.
"They're lovely, Vasily."
And they were. The nobleman was so sweet, so charming, it was hard not to like him.
"Listen," she said. "We actually don't have time to stay in Vallaki. We need to head out immediately. Have you heard anything from the Count?"
"No, I've written to him, told him I'm the new burgomaster, but I haven't heard anything. I suppose that's good, right?"
"Yes, well, he sent us an invitation. We're going to dine with him tomorrow night, and you're invited too. That's why we came back here, to pick you up. He must want to meet you."
"Really?" Vasily's eyes went big with fear and excitement.
"Don't worry, you'll be safe with us. Rest assured."
Vasily quickly left to change his clothes and pack a bag. A servant saddled his horse. They were back on the road in no time, and Vasily told them about how he was making efforts to improve the town.
"I've even set up an orphanage," he said to Navarra with pride. "I've made sure they have everything they need, especially good food. Most of them are nothing but skin and bone. What about you? The inn got a new shipment of wine 2 days ago, so I assumed everything went well with the winery. Were you able to send Milivarge to train with that abbot?"
Though Navarra did not want to lead him on, she found herself telling Vasily all about their adventures. She left out many important details, for fear that Strahd might interrogate him. She thought it unwise to give Vasily any information that could get him into trouble with the vampire. Henry and the others especially did not want him knowing about Apollo. They headed due east and traveled over 20 miles until they reached the old bone grinder. It was late into the night, but Navarra did not feel tired. She couldn't wait for Henry to consecrate the wood fane now that they were here again. But what would she tell Vasily? She had not mentioned Gostomir since returning to Vallaki. The problem, however, soon resolved itself. When Navarra and the others dismounted and began walking to the standing stones, Vasily told them he wanted to sleep in the windmill.
"That place?" Irina asked. "I wouldn't go in there if I were you."
"It's probably haunted," Rowan said. "I don't mind." Vasily wrapped his cloak around himself. "I'd rather be indoors. Vampires can't enter a dwelling if you don't let them in." Navarra rolled her eyes. They were going to have dinner with a vampire. She would have tried talking Vasily out of it, insisting that it would be safer in the fane once it was consecrated, but she really didn't want him to come. She wanted to be with Gostomir, and did not have the heart to explain anything to Vasily just yet. Instead, Navarra walked the nobleman to the mill, and was about to say good night when he opened the door, and a loud alarm rang out. Navarra and Vasily held their ears as the piercing siren shrieked into the night. A moment later, the alarm stopped, and footsteps were heard coming down the stairs.
"Oi! Who's there?"
came a familiar voice from within.
"I'm warning you, I've got things I can defend myself with."
A thin young man stood near the door, pointing a wand at them. His pasty white body was covered only by an apron.
"Victor?"
Navarra asked in disbelief.
"Hot elf chick?"
he asked.
"It's Navarra," she said, "and my friend Vasily. The others are here too." "Shit! Let me put some clothes on. I'll be right back."
Victor dashed up the stairs. When Henry, Irina, and Rowan came asking what all the noise was about, Victor stomped back down. They were all surprised to find him here.
"How long have you been living here?"
Rowan asked. They talked in candlelight on the first floor of the mill, which was still strewn with debris from fighting the hags. The place smelled like mildew or something worse.
"I skipped town the night you all offed me dad," he said.
"So," Navarra said.
"You're not upset?"
Why would I be? That bugger had it coming. Someone was going to do it sooner or later. I figured when Mum came home, screaming and crying after that festival, that was it. I sure wasn't going to stick around. I like it here. Now I can practice magic without being bothered." Victor showed them to the top floor, which was messy but dry, then offered them food that looked like roast chicken but tasted like porridge. Navarra scarfed her food down and urged Henry to go with her to the fane. Only after they ate did Victor tell them that he had learned to transform objects into food. "This batch was made from nothing but grass," Victor said, and Navarra suddenly felt her stomach turn. Only Vasily stayed in the mill that night with Victor, while the rest of them headed to the standing stones. Henry used the last 2 vials of holy water to consecrate the fane, but as usual, Gostomir did not appear until Navarra summoned him after the others went to sleep. As soon as the Fae appeared, Navarra embraced him. She pulled him behind one of the stones, hidden from any windows of the mill, and then kissed him.
"I've missed you,"
Navarra said, even though it had only been a day.
"Navarra, watch this."
Gostomir raised his hand and snapped his fingers. He disappeared. Then, a moment later, he reappeared.
"What are you doing?"
Navarra asked.
"Magic," he said with a grin. "Now you try. Just snap."
Gostomir snapped his fingers, and again he disappeared. What mischief was he up to? Navarra held her hand up and snapped. Her surroundings changed in an instant. She was now standing in the middle of the bog fane. The marshy grass was wet under her feet, and a few flies buzzed by her head. Gostomir watched her like a child showing off a new toy. Navarra's jaw dropped.
"Are we really in Berez?"
Gostomir smiled and nodded.
"Just snap again to go back."
Navarra snapped. She was in the wood fane, and there were Henry, Irina, and Rowan, asleep on their bedrolls. She snapped again. The bog fane. She snapped. The wood fane.
"They're connected!"
she exclaimed, going back and forth until she was dizzy.
"Yes!"
Gostomir said, blinking in and out along with Navarra. They stopped in the wood fane.
"And when you consecrate the hill fane, you'll be able to snap to all 3. Have you remembered where the last fane is?"
"Wow, Navarra, is that Gostomir? Hey, are you guys teleporting?" Henry was up and watching them. Gostomir disappeared without snapping his fingers.
"Henry,"
Navarra said.
"you scared him off."
But she could not stay mad at the night. It was Gostomir's fault for spooking, and she was too excited to share what she had just learned. Irina and Rowan woke up as well, and Navarra demonstrated the newfound power of the fanes.
"This is so cool,"
Henry said, and they all laughed as they hopped from one circle to the other and back again. The next morning, Navarra told the others she wanted to leave the Tome of Strahd behind. She did not want the Count confiscating it when they reached the castle. After having eggs with Victor that tasted a bit like dirt, Navarra and the others went into the woods, away from the mill to bury it.
"What's that book?"
Vasily asked when Navarra pulled out the tome and wrapped it in a waterproof skin. Henry dug a small hole by a large maple. Navarra placed the bundle in the ground.
"It's nothing really," she said. "Nothing for you to worry about."
She wiped her hands together after covering the book with loose earth. She was about to mount Juniper when a black carriage came rolling out of the fog. Pulled by 4 black horses and driven by no one, the carriage stopped on the road in front of them and opened its passenger door. Navarra looked at Rowan, Irina, Henry, and finally Vasily.
"Here we go,"
Navarra said, taking a breath and stepping in. The carriage was decked with velvet on the inside. When it lurched forward, Vasily, sitting beside her, held tight to Navarra's hand.
"Don't worry," she
said, giving him a reassuring squeeze. Rowan had refused to enter the coffin-like box, and instead rode behind on Juniper with Snowflake. But Irina and Henry sat across from Navarra and Vasily, each looking out the windows. Irina's eyes went dark as she watched the forest passing by.
"You don't have to do this, Irina," Navarra said. "It's not too late to back out."
The young woman laced her arm through Henry's and said,
"I want to stay with all of you. Besides, where else could I go?"
The anticipation sat heavy on them all as they rode many miles east on the Svalich road. They passed through forests and craggy mountain passes. A roll of thunder pealed low in the distance, and Navarra's heart raced. She was ready for this, she told herself. It wouldn't be so bad. In fact, it would be thrilling. She had never been inside a castle before, let alone a vampire's castle. She peered out a window as the sky darkened, and a few drops of rain escaped the heavy clouds. If it poured, Rowan would look a right mess when they arrived.
"There it is,"
Irina said. Castle Ravenloft. The fortress loomed ominous against the threatening skies. Bursts of light erupted behind dark clouds, and thunder cracked. The castle grew bigger as the coach drove through the outer barbican. The wheels rolled, and the horses' hooves clip-clopped along the creaking drawbridge, high above the valley. When it passed through the gatehouse and reached the courtyard, the carriage stopped, opening its doors. Navarra and the others stepped out, looking up at the tall towers covered by dead vines. A round window above them, with panes of warm-colored glass, was lit from within. A strange man with fur around his face and cat-like ears greeted them at the door.
"I'm the butler," he said, "and I will be your chef this evening. I hope you all enjoy the food. May I take your cloaks?"
They all gave the servant their cloaks, except Rowan, who took hers off and held it with white-knuckled hands. Navarra looked down at the butler's reptilian feet, and the name Bellevue came to mind. He led them through the oaken doors of the keep, past leering gargoyles and faded frescoes. The 5 of them walked in a clustered bunch, Navarra hand in hand with Vasily. They passed through the vestibule into a grand entrance hall, with pillars and a vaulted ceiling draped with cobwebs. To their left was a rising stone staircase, lit with sputtering torches in iron sconces. Rahadin was walking down the stairs. "Welcome to Ravenloft," he said, when he reached the bottom step. "I have been expecting you. Lady Irina Kolyana, Navarra of Harrington, Sir Henry Gibson, and Rowan Arnuana." Then he turned to Vasily. "My lord, where will you be entertaining your guests this evening? In the great hall or in the dining room?" "In the great hall," Vasily said. His voice had changed. Navarra slowly turned to the man holding her hand. "My sweet, lovely Navarra," Vasily said. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this moment." He kissed her hand, and as he did, his features and clothing transformed into those of Strahd von Zarevich. "Rahadin, give them some time to freshen up and dress themselves in suitable attire. I will be waiting." With that, Strahd released Navarra's hand and walked off through a set of double doors.